there was a study or a report that said that many relationships may survive infidelity, but most relationships will not survive financial stress. Financial stress is what happens when you guys don't have organized finances. Welcome to the Money Fit MD show. I'm Dr. Latifat, the founder of Money Fit MD. We want to change the narrative where women physicians use. My job is to let you know that's gonna be. I have to surround myself with people that are doing crazy. Hey, Doc, if you have ever asked yourself the question of how do I invest, especially when my husband or my spouse or my partner is not on board, this episode is for you. This is a question that comes up so many times for women, and I'm sure it probably comes up for men as well, maybe or maybe not. But I work with women physicians, so it's a question that comes up before people join the money school and sometimes even when they're in the money school. And over the last 5 years, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard people say things like, my husband's not on board, but we want to buy real estate. My husband's not on board. How do I grow my wealth? My husband's not on board, blah, blah, blah. And the truth be told, it's especially harder if you are like one of my clients or many of my clients who may be the first in their family to be able to lead at the level that they're leading when it comes to wealth and legacy. So if any of that applies to you at all, you are about to have a great time, and this episode is exactly with you in mind. If I haven't met you, I'm Dr. Latifat. I'm a physician, and I'm also the founder of Money Fit MD. Everything we do here is to help you have more money, have more time, more peace of mind, and build your legacy. How does that sound? And my favorite part is without grinding and hustling. It's funny, when I wrote my first book, bestseller on Amazon. Yes, I had to add that because, yeah, we earned it. And it was when I wrote that first book, I was trying to figure out the title of the book, and it's called Don't We Broke, The Woman Physician's Guide to More Money and Less Hustle. And I remember being so uncomfortable with the book title. And the reason why I was uncomfortable with it is it was at a time where everybody seemed to be hustling and grinding so hard. And for me, I work hard, but I truly believe that hustling and grinding is when you are working hard in a wrong direction, in a wrong alignment, or at the wrong time. So maybe you're meant to be resting, but you're not resting, and instead you're trying to like grind it like crazy, right? But we can work hard and still not be like hustling. And so I just have this memory as I'm recording this episode right now, how hard and how uncomfortable it was for me to call my book How to Have Money, literally, without hustling and without grinding. But that's what I'm about. We work hard, we serve, we build things, we grow net worth, we change lives, but we do it in a way that's aligned, and we make sure we rest. In fact, today I took a nap, which I do many days. If I don't nap, I may do like a 30 minutes of rest. And the reason why is because it gives me like a second surge during the day. So I'm grateful that I get to do that. I don't do it every day. There are times when I don't have time to do it. There are times when I may choose not to do it, but literally it's taken me like over 40 years to master the art of resting and napping, or napping and resting. I don't know, whatever. But so why am I talking about this episode today? I'm talking about this because this is a real life concern for many women physicians that I've had a chance to work with. And I will give myself as an example where when we started our financial journey, we knew nothing about money. I did not grow up in the US. My husband did not grow up in the US. And even though both of our parents, our families had gone from being of, you know, being raised in low economic state to working hard and doing better for themselves, that was not something that we had learned in the US, right? And so it was like we didn't know what money was, we didn't know how the rules were. We were introduced into the American dream like everybody else, which is like overspend, spend what you don't have, don't invest. Yeah, that American dream. So we had to learn. And I remember when we started, I kind of started learning about money, or realizing the fact that medicine as we knew it was going to be different, or medicine as we had thought it was going to be was going to be different. What that meant was that I realized, which I'm so grateful to God for, that if I wanted to practice medicine the way that I was going, which was minding my own business, being a great doctor, being a good doctor, taking care of my patients, that was going to be a straight line to burnout. because the way that healthcare was working was physicians that wanted to mind their business were being taken advantage of. And it was definitely inevitable that if you want to do good in medicine, there's a very high chance that you and your administration are going to clash heads or butt heads or whatever, because you care about, you know, the way you want to practice like hard driven medicine, but they may have other goals in mind. So I'm grateful that I had that moment where I was like, okay, something's got to change. I have to do something differently. I cannot keep ignoring my finances. I cannot keep ignoring my debt. I could not negotiate, which I did not negotiate when I started my first job. Well, I said I wanted to work 0.8 FTE. That was the only level of negotiation that I did. But otherwise, I did not negotiate anything else. I did not know what questions to ask, all of that good stuff. But anyways, when I started learning, I remember I sold my husband. And I'm saying I sold him because I had to convince him, in terms of like I had to tell him the thoughts that I had in my head on why I thought it was a reasonable idea for me to pay off my student debt. And in order for us to pay off my student debt and some other debt we had was about $200,000, we had to, not leave, like, I don't know what expectations they had of what our life was going to look like when I became an attendant, which, I mean, honestly, I had expectations that our life was going to look different because I also did not know that you did not just take your money and buy a huge house. So there was the resetting the expectation and selling it, quote unquote, selling it, or exchanging the belief, or giving the belief that I had in my mind, the thoughts that I had in my mind about why this was a good idea. So for example, it was, well, if I don't have student loans, that means that maybe I don't have to pay money on interest for a very, very long time, which obviously can add up. But also, it was, well, if I don't have student debt, we may have less expenses per month. And that could potentially mean that I don't have to work extra shifts and all this other stuff, right? Because at that time, I did not know a lot about money or the benefits of money or the benefits of growing wealth. So I was just going based on what I knew with my own basic elementary knowledge. And so that was when it was like, okay, that's a great idea. So again, I explained the reasons why it was reasonable in my head. I told him the reasons why, those reasons, and he thought about it as like, those are reasonable too. So we came together with that combined goal in mind, which was we are going to pay off Latifah's um debt, right? And also credit card debt. And that meant that affected our family, right? That affected the kind of vacation, what we spent money on. We pretty much were living on one income still, even after training. We lived on one. While we started learning about money, we started living on one income so that we can put the other income to work. So we were not in a rush to, we did not increase our standard of living. We did not buy a big house. We did not buy new cars. We had two cars, which we needed to have because of the area that we lived in. And so that worked. And then once we were done paying it off, and I realized that, okay, apparently paying debt off doesn't give you automatic freedom. I was like, came back to the drawing board. I was like, hey, boo, hey, husband of life. So remember what I said about if we have no debt, we would be free. Apparently, that's not the case. It's more like if you have investments, you will grow your net worth and you'll be able to reach financial freedom. So literally, the work that we had done and what I discussed 2 years or so earlier about why it was a benefit for us to have no debt, and I had to almost say the exact opposite, which was now let's go into debt to borrow to buy real estate because this is how it helps. So I stated those facts to the best of my ability because again, I was not at the peak of my own knowledge then. And all of that information was what actually, he thought about it, looked at it, the ideas, the thoughts that I had were transferred, deemed reasonable, in alignment with the goals that I believed were important to him. And I'm stating this because I want you to make sure you're creating your checklist of what you need in order to be able to, encourage your spouse to maybe invest in a way that they may not normally invest in, right? But also for us, I understood, and we both came into the understanding that we didn't know a lot. So we had the humility to realize that there had to be some other way. So I used a lot of practical examples. This is this person, that's what they're doing, this is what they're doing. So not some like random statistics based stuff, but more like these are examples. Because again, whenever you are together, whenever you have a spouse, and you guys are partnering together, you're partnering together with benefits, you're partnering together with risk, right? And I know that sometimes people separate their entire finances, but understand that separation of the finances does not necessarily mean the other person doesn't suffer, right? For the mistakes that you may make. And I'm saying that in the perspective of, if you are stressed, you are shorter tempered because you're finding that you lost all of your money. Even if the finances are separated, there is still emotional impact to the decisions that you made that does affect the other person. And honestly, if they care about you, they don't like to see you suffer. So there's also that part of the fact that you're together with someone that is reasonable, I hope, right? Right? So essentially, though, that conversation that we had again was what now led us into doing real estate. And anytime we're about to embark on a journey, that there are times when Sheila is the one leading the journey, there are times when I'm the one leading, because we have different strengths, we have different weaknesses. I mean, when it comes to technology, if it was all up to me, I'm going to be like in the dark ages. We're going to be like writing things up. Well, I still write things on paper. We may have no network security. All my passwords are going to be things that I can't remember. I mean, this is an example from the other side. And I'm building this for you because I truly believe that this is what you need to understand in order to be able to take the actions that you want to take. And so my husband is an IT guy, all about network security and all of that stuff. And for me, for the longest, I was like stuck in the dark ages of being able to remember all of your passwords. So the whole idea of like having passwords that were long and annoying, that used to piss me off. I'm like, for real? Like, why do you keep getting this long passwords that I cannot remember? And he's like, network security, network security, network security. I'm like, oh, whatever. Right. But eventually he had to like have a come to Jesus moment or conversation with me, like, Latifah, you will get hacked. Latifah, this will happen. And, I took safety measures many years ago. But I would say that my Facebook account got hacked in a couple years ago, and after that, I definitely have like heightened and elevated my level of network security. And now to the point where I'm definitely like doing way, 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 way better. But that was something that I did not know that was important for the health of our wealth, right? And he had to tell me the reasons and sell me on why me remembering my password was not enough. Me remembering my password was not a way. Like that thought I had to remember my password was a thought that was actually making my network and systems and security and our family and our wealth and all of that stuff vulnerable, right? So again, it's not one way or the other. It's both, right? Because ultimately you guys are probably different because you bring different things to the table. But the same way you have to sell them, they also have to sell you. And some of you guys are like, is that manipulation? No, it's not. Because I mean, if you think about it, like if you guys are trying to decide what to eat for dinner, someone may want this, someone may want that. We want to go to the same restaurant to eat. It's like, you need to tell me the thoughts, the beliefs of why you think this is a great idea. And so this is the same thing when it comes to investing as well. Because the challenge is this: if you don't learn how to do this, you are going to not be able to do your job effectively. And what do I mean by doing your job effectively? As a woman physician that happens to be in my world, part of your job is to be a leader or co-leader in building the wealth of your family. You literally are part of, like, you are a co-partner. If you're single, you are a boss partner on being the CEO of your finances as a family. And so if you're like, well, I don't want to disagree with my spouse, I don't want to let them know why this is a great idea. And instead, I'm going to just settle back into comfort of what we were doing before when it came to our money, our finances, our investments, our spending, all of that. You would literally be like robbing your family of not just wealth and asset, but freedom, of memory, and all of that stuff. Like when I look at my life, I'm so glad that I did the things that I did. Because if we did not do those, if we did not have the uncomfortable conversation, if we did not sell each other on the things that we believe are important, there's no way we would have been able to take a year off traveling around the world. There's no way we would have been able to, like, weather some economic times that has happened globally, nationally, and even sometimes even in our own family, right? There are things that we do, like we own Airbnbs. There are times when they're like bumps in the road. Like literally, just a couple of weeks ago, we had some issue with the hot tub at our short-term rental, right? So there's going to be bumps in the road. And if they don't have the vision or similar oriented vision like you do, because you haven't done the good job of exchanging and telling them the same beliefs, the same thoughts that has helped you come to the reasonable idea and realization that this work matters, your role, your investment, how you spend money, all of that matters, you will be robbing your family of literally the best parts of their life. So avoiding this conversation is not it's not better. It's not safer. It may feel like that in the short term, but I promise you, you guys will pay for it. And I like to remind people that there is a sacrifice. There's always a sacrifice. The best things in life have a sacrifice. Like, so the question becomes like, what are you willing to sacrifice in the short term for long-term gain? Are you willing to sacrifice the discomfort that you have because your spouse doesn't necessarily agree with you, but you both are like, I don't necessarily agree, but if you think it's a good idea, go do it. Like, are you willing to take that on in order to help your family live a life of freedom, of not being cuffed, making your kids have a better life than they could ever dream of? One of the physicians that I know, she invests heavily in real estate. And when she actually started she's married. Her husband was not on board with it. Was like, you're on your own. I'm not interested in this. So of course she was nervous. She was nervous about it, doing all that stuff. But you know, a couple of years later, I think about 2 years later, she was able to quit her. She actually quit her clinical job because she was like, we're both physicians. Our kids are missing out on certain things that in this season I want to. This is what I believe that I want to do. I'm called to do is to just be home with them, not just, but like be home with them and not practice medicine right now. And she was able to do that. Guess what? Our husband was like, when the numbers make sense and I can also cut down at work, please let me know, right? If she did not take the lead on going when there was resistance, on leaning in with the discomfort, they would not be in a place where that conversation would be happening. And now their family is different. They take vacations. They're able to spend time on improving their relationship and other things that are important to them. Okay. So don't, not moving, not doing is not an option. You may just need to get better with conversations. And to be honest with you, I know us women, we know how to get our way. You can. It's just a matter of like sometimes shutting down the ego, understanding the sacrifice. Again, are you willing to sacrifice your ego to get to a level of having a conversation that is kind, be a good listener, answer questions, bring up evidence, and all of that? So what I want to do is, I think I have like three main things that I believe would help, and I kind of already talked about them, but I want to make sure that it's clear, it's concise, and that you take away what will help you so that you and your family can benefit from the knowledge that you now have access to, so that you guys are not left behind and blaming each other. Because at the end of the day, it's not just the cost of what you do, it's the cost of what you don't do. It's the consequence of what you don't do. Because when you're not investing and you guys are hustling like crazy, there is a cost to that. The net worth that you could be having, right? There's a cost to that. I literally was just teaching a series that I was showing the ladies what one of our members, one of the things that I love is I love when physicians get paid well, period, for the work that they do, because I don't think we should be underpaid for the amazing value that we're already given. And there was a physician in our community who was going to go through a negotiation, and she said she was thinking about asking for like 30K more or something than what she was earning. But I'm like side-eyed her and coached her, threatened her, was gonna cut out, and I'm just joking. Well, joking, not I'm just joking. But anyways, the point was that with all of that, what she ended up landing at was about $125,000 more than what she was getting per year. That was not the bonus, that was per year. I know, pretty rad, right? So looking at like what that would convert to post-tax and the benefit of investing that difference. If all she did is nothing else except invest that difference every year for the next 20 years, that would literally make a difference of about $4 million in their net worth. So imagine if she did not invest, right? If she did not negotiate, learn to ask in a way that gets her what she wants, learn how to spend it in a way that actually builds wealth, and learn how to invest it in a way that is going to be simple, effective, and over time has the potential to grow based on what we know, based on data in the past, to about $4 million or so over the course of like 20 years. Look at what that would be costing her family. It's a difference between, like, huge difference between both of those, like having $4 million additional, or even all she had then is like $4 million. Imagine what that could do for their life in 20 years from now, right? And so again, there is cost to not action, there is cost to not doing, there is cost to not moving. So I don't want you to think about, well, I don't want to have this conversation and then park your car there. I want you to know the cost so that if that's what you're doing, doctor aware, MD aware. Does that make sense? Okay. By the way, if what you're hearing on this podcast is helping you, if this is like, yes, Latifa, these are like the conversations that women are struggling with, these are the conversations that women physicians are struggling with, I would love it if you could do three things actually. One is, please, please, please leave us a review. Leave us a review. We have almost 300 episodes right now. I think we could do with 300 reviews with the number of downloads we get. And so if you had never left us a review, I would absolutely love it. Absolutely love it, because it helps other people find us. So that's number one. Number two is, I'd love if you can share this. If you're like in a group that you own, in a WhatsApp group of your friends that are women physicians, or texting your colleagues, please share. The reason why I do this, literally the labor of love, is because there is literally no one else that's having this nuanced conversation that is especially targeted towards people that are first generational wealth builders, mission based, legacy minded women physicians that are maybe still wealth builders, right? Because even when I started, I was just like hiding in the dark. I did not know. Well, there literally was no one that was having this conversation, so I could not find me. So, anyways, I would really, really love that. So, those are two things. And then the third thing is, I would love, what I'm looking to do more of in 2025 and beyond is, I would love to speak more at organizational levels. What do I mean by that? If you're part of like national organizations like AMA, AGA, ACG, organization like the American organizations of whatever specialties you're in, I know that they have conferences, virtual and in person. I would really love it if you could recommend me as a speaker if you believe that this is conversations that you would like to hear from a stage. And I'm very, very experienced when it comes to that. I've done a lot of work and speaking in the coaching world. I've done lots of work even in, I think I spoke at 4GI conferences last year. I have some this year. I have some coming up next year. I did some HIMON conversations last year as well. I have some coming up this year, but I'd love to do more of that. If you're a pediatrician, primary care, SNMA, Hispanic societies, like, I want to speak to women in those areas because unfortunately those conversations are missing. And many times when they invite people to talk about money, it is usually sterile, it is boring, and it's usually a financial advisor that knows nothing about what life as a woman physician really is. So those are three things that I really, really would love. Okay. So, three things summary of what we've talked about so far is, number one is, if you want to invest, even if your spouse is not on board, and how to get your spouse on board, it is by selling them and literally the same thoughts. Why do you think this is a good investment? Write it down and now have that conversation with them, but make sure that you're positioning the value based on what matters to the things that your spouse cares about as well. So, for example, your spouse may not be a physician, they may not understand burnout terminology, but they may understand that you want to be able to take more family vacation because maybe they lost their parent at an early age, right? And value, as the easiest way I can define value, is what they want. That's value. What they want. What does your spouse want? What does your spouse want, right? Make sure you position this in the context of what your spouse wants. And what your spouse wants is not just about what they want, it's like what the family want or what their vision, which hopefully it's combined vision for the family. So that's number one. Number two is, there is a space for telling instead of asking for permission. So what do I mean by that? Like, when it comes to, say, Money Fit MD, like, our personal finances are all combined together. But when it comes to like business stuff, like, my husband makes decisions in his business, I make decisions in my business. I do ask for if I want like his brain, if he wants my brain. We do exchange ideas and thoughts. If we're going to do something that's going to potentially destroy our businesses, we'll let each other know. But otherwise, like, I, for example, like, I've been investing in coaching like multiple five figures, and my husband's like, I don't understand what you guys are doing. Like, it makes no sense to me. This is ridiculous. But like, he's now seeing the return on investment to the point where now, I think 4 years after I started paying for coaching, we actually paid for combined coaching together. That was way more than what I'd spent alone on coaching. So my point is this: if I did not do it, we would not have seen, I would not have been sold on the benefit so hard to the point where I'm like, babe, I'm good with money. And this is literally life changing. And also, you've seen the benefits of it. And this is something that actually comes up quite often for women in my community, which is there are times when after you join the money school, your husband or your spouse may not be very excited about it because they're like, oh, man, now you're being intentional about money. Like we're having conversations we never had before. But then when your spouse is able to like take that road trip around the country, suddenly they're like really excited that someone got it together. Right. When your spouse is now enjoying Disneyland bougie, they're like, well, I'm glad you were all up in our money. Right. When your spouse is like, I can't believe we paid off all that credit card within a year. You're like, yep, I'm glad I chose to be the lead on this one. When your spouse is like, I can't believe we can actually afford to travel the world or travel, take 3 months off. Like, you have to understand the benefit, right? The benefit has to be worth the discomfort for you. And so the thing is, there are times when you may need to like, FYI, I'm doing this and it's not going to impact us, or this is how I'm going to like scale back on some other things that I'm doing so that that can that can be contained in our overall whatever overall spending or budget or whatever. That's something that you definitely can do. And then the last one but not the least is sort of like what I kind of started to talk about when it comes to having different businesses and who makes decisions. In like my husband makes decisions about his investments, his expenses in his business. I do the same thing in my business. But also when it comes to personal finance, our personal finance are mostly mixed together because we like transparency in that regard, but also because, I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and I haven't checked to confirm this data or this report, but this person on the podcast said that there was a study or a report that said that many relationships may survive infidelity, but most relationships will not survive financial stress, right? Financial stress is what happens when nothing changes. Financial stress is what happens when the trajectory of your family does not change. Financial stress is what happens when you guys don't have organized finances. So for us, we know that combining a lot of our finances together will cause more conversations, which sometimes you're like, I just don't want to have conversations. However, it's a level of intimacy that can be deepening in your relationship. So when you're having conversations around money and you can have them, learn how to have them successfully, which is one of the things that I talk to very, very frequently inside of the money school. That's something that can actually help you guys with intimacy. So for example, my husband and I, we go on a almost weekly date, money date. We have a lunch date almost every week. Like that's something that we've been able to create because our finances are where they are, our investments are where they are. And we see that our being together in that regard is of value for the family. So again, just to summarize, number one is you got to sell them based on what they want. That is the value. Number two is there's room for talent instead of like asking for permission. Number three is spending money that's yours in that way. And even if your personal finances all together, having a specific percentage or amount that each person can separate into their account and, they get to spend it however, you get to spend it however. That's something that I highly recommend because and the thought behind that, even with our personal finance, was if he wanted to give money to someone that I didn't necessarily agree with, it can use his discretionary funds. And the same thing for me, I can use my discretionary funds for whatever I want to spend it on. Of course, nothing illegal, nothing that's going to get us in trouble, but you get what I mean, right? If a friend is asking for money, you want to give to a cause, they're like, it may not be on board with, or Latifa may not be on board with. That is like, I'm a boss kind of like funds. Like, I'm my own boss kind of funds. Like, I can make decisions. I'm a grown woman account. I'm a grown man account. We're just going to call it that. How about that? So anyways, I hope this has been helpful. Again, don't forget the 3 asks that I have. I would really, really appreciate that if you found this of value because there's such a need for this kinds of like nuanced, unique, detailed conversations that really do move the needle forward for women physicians. And as always, if I can be of support, if you're a woman physician who was listening right now and you're like, Latifa, I need to have the space for women that are bosses like me, like you, that are building wealth, that are taking the lead or co-lead and building the financial security, economic stability, net worth growth, wealth, legacy, freedom for their family. The Money School is probably a good place to check out. So you can go to moneyfitmd.com/money coach. Moneyfitmd.com/money coach. We'll also have the link in here as well. You can submit your application. We'll take a look. And if you're the right fit, we'll let you know. All right. I love you. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Goodbye.